We're talking about being drenched today, and I kind of teased it in the bulletin about being soaked, maybe soaked in grace, but are we really soaked in God? And that's what this message is about this morning. And it's taken from, again, our study of the book of Joshua, chapter 14 now, verse 12. Now therefore, give me this mountain of which the Lord spoke in that day. For you heard in that day how the Anakim were there, and that the cities were great and fortified. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall be able to drive them out as the Lord said. This is just a very tail end of a text that we'll be talking a little bit more about in a moment. But I want to tell you, if you haven't already figured it out, that you'll never have a problem-free life. Ever. It's just not going to happen. I mean, pigs might fly someday. Kangaroos might learn how to swim someday. Men might actually surrender the remote control someday. Or women would quit buying purses one day. I don't know. It's all possible, right? But not maybe entirely likely. But a problem-free, no-hassle life, some blue sky existence where all the roads are smooth and we have clear and smooth sailing ahead of us, don't hold your breath. Because problems, as you know, happen. They happen to rich people. They happen to sexy people. They happen to educated people. They happen to sophisticated people. They happen to retired people. They happen to single people. They happen to spiritual people and even secular people. All people have problems. But not all people see problems the same way. Some people are overcome by their problems, and some people overcome their problems. Some people are left bitter because of their problems, and actually there are some people who are left better because of them. Some people face their challenges with fear. Others face challenges with considerable faith. And Caleb, in the story, in the book of Joshua, did. His story stands out to us in this 14th chapter of Joshua because his faith stood out. Because you see, 45 years earlier than Joshua chapter 14, when Moses had sent 12 spies, remember, into the land of Canaan to spy it out. Is this a territory that we can take? Are these people that we can overcome? Are these cities that we can inherit as our own? Caleb was among those 12 spies. He and Joshua both believed upon inspection that the land could be taken. But since the other 10 spies disagreed with that conclusion, the children of Israel ended up wandering in the wilderness for 40 years to kill off the generation of people who would not trust in God's promise. The only two people who were saved from that generation were Joshua and Caleb. But God took note of Caleb's courage. The man's convictions were so striking that God paid him a compliment that would even make probably a saint blush. Because we know in Exodus or Numbers chapter 14, verse 24, here's what God said. My servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly. Now, how would you like to have those words on your resume? How would you like God to say, you know what? Randy trusts me with his whole heart. That'd be awesome. So then what type of spirit catches God's eye? I mean, that got me curious. What is it about this man Caleb that caught God's attention? What qualifies as this different spirit, as God said in the book of Numbers? And answers to that question begin to emerge during the distribution of the lands now to all of the tribes as they are on the west side of the Jordan River. But before everybody got their inheritance, a promise needed to be fulfilled. In Joshua chapter 14, verse 6, it says, "And Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, 'You know the word which the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, concerning you and me at Kadesh Barnea.'" He's referring to Joshua. "The word of the Lord said to you, Joshua, and me at Kadesh Barnea." Now, I'm envisioning a real sturdy guy, kind of with sinewy muscles. Caleb is probably gray-headed and great-hearted, and he steps forward. And as he does, there's like this spring to his step, and maybe a sparkle in his eye, because there is a promise he is intent on collecting. "Joshua, remember what Moses told you and me at Kadesh Barnea?" Kadesh Barnea. It brought about memories for both Joshua and Caleb, because this 45-year-old memory stems from Joshua and Caleb's initial disbursement from that city into the land of Canaan that they were spying out. It was from this particular camp at Kadesh Barnea that Moses had sent out these 12 spies. And it was in this camp that Moses had received two completely different reports. 2 of them said the land can be taken. 10 of them said they are giants in that land. We cannot do it. All 12 men had agreed on the value of the land. They all said it was a land that was flowing, as they say, with milk and with honey. And all 12 agreed on the description of the people and the cities. They were large and they were fortified. But only Joshua and Caleb believed that the land could be taken. And I want you to read with me carefully the words that Caleb spoke to Joshua at the end of this military campaign. I am now reading, and you can follow on the overhead. Joshua chapter 14, verses 6 through 12. Caleb said to Joshua, "You know the word which the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, concerning you and me in Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought back word to him as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. But I wholly followed the Lord my God." So Moses swore on that day, saying, "Surely the land where your foot has trodden shall be your inheritance and your children's forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. And now, behold, the Lord's kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years, ever since the Lord spoke this word to Moses, while Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now, here I am, 85 years old. As yet, I am as strong this day as on the day that Moses sent me. Just as my strength was then, so is now my strength for war, both for going out and for coming in. Now, therefore, give me this mountain of which the Lord spoke in that day. For you heard in that day how the Anakim were there and that the cities were great and fortified. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall be able to drive them out as the Lord said. I printed this for you so you could read it along with me, because I wanted you to pay careful attention to the name that appears and reappears in Caleb's words. The Lord, 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 the Lord. 9 separate times in 6 verses, Caleb says the Lord. So, who do you think was on Caleb's mind, church? Who was in Caleb's heart? What was Caleb thinking? What caused Caleb to have a different spirit? Well, maybe Just maybe it's because he centered his mind on the Lord. And it raises a question for all of us. What about you? What about me? If we were to do some sort of transcript of our mind, what would it reveal? What emphasis would be in our head? Would it be the Lord? Or would it be the problem, the problem, the problem, the problem, the problem? Or would it be the economy, the economy, the economy? Or the jerk, the jerk, the jerk, the jerk? Where is your mind? What do you think about? If we were to see this transcript of what is in your heart and on your mind, what repetitive word may there be in your life that causes you to behave and act the way that you do? Caleb, this little character out of the book of Joshua, was a huge and great man because his mind was on the Lord. And, you know, it's not like inheritance people like us deny the presence of problems. I mean, we know that this Canaan, this promised land, this life that we're living now is full of Jerichos, and it's full of giants. It would be stupid and ridiculous not to acknowledge that. It doesn't do any good to pretend that that wasn't true. And servants like Caleb aren't naive, and neither are we. But servants like Caleb immerse their minds in God thoughts. Caleb was different because he soaked his mind in God. I want to just give you a visual. I want you to take an orange. I want you to take the peel off, and then I want you to cut it in half, peel it in half, so that you have half an orange here and half an orange here. And then I want you to envision two bowls of water, a bowl of really cold, crisp water in one bowl, and in the other one, a bowl of battery acid. Okay? Two halves of an orange, two bowls. Now, I want you to take the orange and put one half in the water and put one half in the battery acid. I don't want you to let it sit there for, 10, 15 minutes. Let your oranges marinate in the water and in the battery acid. And then, after 15 minutes, I want you to take the half out of the fresh water and the half out of the battery acid, and I will ask you, which of those two halves are you going to eat? You're going to eat the one, I hope, from the fresh water, because the one that's been marinating in the battery acid tastes horrible. In fact, it could kill you. And if our minds are constantly marinating in our problems, the jerk, the economy, whatever, what do you think the output of your life is going to look like if what you're taking in is always the negative? Joshua had God on his mind, and in 6 verses uses the Lord 9 separate times. The psalmist showed us how to do what Caleb was able to do. In Psalm chapter 42, verse 5, the psalmist says, "Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you so disquieted within me?" You see, the psalmist at this point was sad and discouraged, and the struggles of life were threatening to pull the psalmist under and therefore take another victim. But at just the right time, the writer made this decision in verses 5 and 6. "Hope in God, for I shall yet praise him. I will remember you from the land of the Jordan, and from the heights of Hermon, and from the hill of Mizar." There's resolve in those words, aren't there? The words, "I will," or "I shall yet." I will remember you. The writer is making a deliberate decision to treat his downcast soul with thoughts of God. Basically, what he's saying is, everywhere I go, I will remember you. From Jordan to Hermon to Mount Mizar. And maybe in your case, I don't know, the verse might read, from the ICU to the cemetery, to the employment line, to the unemployment line, to the courtroom, I will remember you. And church, I'm not suggesting that there's anything easy about doing this. It's not easy. Finding God amid the problems of our life and the billows that are created with these tempestuous seas in which we live is going to take every bit of discipline that you can muster. But the result, church, is worth the strain. Besides, do you really want to meditate on your misery? Will reciting all of your problems turn you into a better person? No, I don't think so, but changing your mindset will. In John chapter 14, verse 27, it says, stop allowing yourselves to be agitated and disturbed. That's point blank. Just stop it. And instead, immerse your mind in God thoughts. Because when troubles come our way, we can be stressed and upset, or we can trust in God. And going back to our story about Caleb, don't forget the context within which this whole story is taking place, because Caleb could have been cursing and swearing at God. He did not deserve the wilderness. Remember, he was one of two, Joshua and Caleb, who said, Moses, we can do this. We can take this land. But the people chose to listen to the other 10 spies, and so they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. But that's not Caleb's bad. He said, we can do it. But now he's having to suffer because other people kept them in the wilderness for an entire generation. He had to put his dreams on hold for 4 decades. But still, he didn't complain, and he wasn't bitter. When the time came for him to inherit his property, he stepped forward with this God-drenched mind to receive it. Paul, writing the church in Colossae, in Colossians chapter 3, verse 2, says, set your mind on things that are where? Above, the higher things. When giants are in your land, church, when doubts are swarming through your mind, turn your thoughts to God. Your best thoughts are God thoughts, because He's above this mess. He is the Most High over all the earth, it says in Psalm 83, verse 18. Moses announced in Exodus chapter 15, verse 11, who among God is like you, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness? Isaiah wrote, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of His glory. You see, church, God is just not holy. God is just not holy, holy. God is holy, holy, holy. And He is holy, unlike you and me. Pain doesn't plague Him. The economy doesn't faze Him. The weather doesn't disturb Him. Elections don't define Him. Diseases don't infect Him. And death cannot claim Him. He has resources we don't, and has wisdom that we have never, ever imagined. Paul, writing to the church in Ephesus, struggling with this very issue, said, He is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. My encouragement to you, church, is to start staring at your mountain less and start staring at the mountain mover more. Ponder God's holiness. Let His splendor just stun you and inspire you. Turn a deaf ear to the doubters. Ignore the naysayers. I mean, people have a right to say what they want. But here's a newsflash. You also have the right to ignore them. Just because someone is singing the blues doesn't mean you have to join the chorus, right? Caleb and Joshua were outnumbered 10-2, but they still believed in God's power. Joshua chapter 14, verse 8, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed the Lord my God. You see, church, Caleb chose to ignore the doubters and believe anyway. So let's take our cue from Caleb. Disregard this lethal disbelief of cynics. We run into them all the time. That's not to give sanction for us to be rude or to be isolated. I mean, when people express their sincere struggles or their questions, sure, help them. But some folks just don't want to be helped. I mean, they prefer to wander in the wilderness. They traffic in misery. They manufacture unhappiness. And they spurn any kind of growth. They would rather pull you down than let you pull them up. So don't let them. Caleb didn't. He filled his mind with faith and took on a really God-sized challenge. When Moses sent Caleb to spy out the land, Caleb saw something that really, really troubled him. It was called the town of Hebron. And that may not have a lot of resonance with you, but let me just kind of describe the history of this town of Hebron that Caleb is looking at. Hebron held a special spot in the history of the Hebrews. It was the only piece of land that Abraham ever owned. Abraham buried his wife there in Hebron. Abraham was buried there in Hebron. So were Isaac and Rebekah and also Jacob. For the Jewish people, Hebron was a very sacred site. But on the day that Caleb first saw it, 45 years earlier, the holy hill that he had remembered was inhabited by really unholy people. I mean, to see the bothered Caleb to his core. It was more than he could take. So Caleb asked Moses for Hebron. Hebron, beneath whose oaks Abraham had slept, whose soil had known the visitation of angels, whose earth entombed for the Hebrew people at that time the holiest of families. Caleb, this man with a different spirit, had a secret desire. Basically, he said to Moses, you know what? Just give me Hebron. I'll take care of it. So Moses took Caleb's request to God, and God gave the answer, and guess what? Caleb was given Hebron. And now, 45 years later, at the age of 85 years old, this old soldier is now ready to inhabit Hebron. Give me this mountain of which the Lord spoke in that day. That's what he says in verse 12. And the last sighting of Caleb had him turning his face toward Hebron, where he did exactly what he promised he would do. He chased the enemy and reclaimed the city for God. Caleb wanted to do something great for the Lord, the Lord, the Lord, the Lord, the Lord. Caleb wanted to do something great for his God. He lived with this higher calling. And the question I challenge myself and you with, how high is your calling? Maybe the reason your problems and my problems from time to time feel so great is because our cause is just too small. Perhaps you and I need to set our minds on a holy cause, because when your cause is great, your problems seem to shrink in size. Do you have a holy cause? Do you have a faith that's worth preserving? Do you have a mission that's worth living for? Ask God to give you a Hebron of your own, to claim for His glory. And I don't know how that looks. Maybe it's a neighbor to encourage. Maybe it's a needy family where you can provide help. Maybe it's a class you can teach. Maybe it's some senior citizens that you can encourage. It really is better to give than it is to receive. You see, in the kingdom of God, we gain by giving, not taking. We grow by helping, not hurting. We advance by serving, not demanding. And if you want to see your problems evaporate, then try helping others with their own. You'll always face problems. We're not going to live a problem-free life as we started this discussion earlier. It's just not going to happen. But you don't have to face them the same way. Instead, immerse your mind in God thoughts. Turn a deaf ear to the doubters. Set your mind on a holy cause. And then, church, once you find that mountain, no giant will be able to stop you. No age will disqualify you, and no problems will defeat you. Because after all, if you choose, you and I and Caleb have a lot in common. We have a different spirit about us because we're drenched. Drenched in God thoughts. And I've issued a challenge to me and to all of you. Hopefully you're praying. 2 words, send 200. Well, I guess that's 3 words, sorry. Send 200. Wouldn't it be marvelous to see 200 people in here? That's what this audience can hold. Wouldn't that be great? And it's growing. We have more here now than we've had in the past Sundays. So it's encouraging. And that's a huge challenge. I mean, to go from a congregation that one time had like 50 people to 200, that's quadrupling its size. But that's the Hebron that I'm looking at. Send 200. That's a big challenge, but if anybody can do it, God can do it. So that's my challenge to you as a church. And it's not just a challenge to you or a challenge to me. It's to try and get your mind thinking about what other challenges can you do? How can you soak your mind in God and accomplish great things for Him? Because you can do things I cannot. And among you, I'm just a brother. There's nothing special about Randy. I mean, I get up here and I have the privilege to speak, and you give me the honor of actually listening. And most of you stay awake, so that's really encouraging. Thank you very much. But I say that to say this. There is nothing special or unique about me. Or, the flip side is, there's a lot that's special and there's a lot unique about me, but the same applies to you too. I can't do what you do. I can't meet the people that you know. I can't get in the environment in which you spend your time. I don't know your job. I don't know your boss. I don't know the people with whom you enjoy time or shop or whatever. You all have a unique place in this church. And in your uniqueness, if you will rise to the challenge of what we've been talking about with Caleb, what's your Hebron? What is that challenge that only God can help you accomplish. And then set your mind on that. Marinate your mind on God thoughts. Not on the problem, not on the economy, not on the jerk, but God. And see if, in doing that, your entire worldview changes. The people that used to get to you, they just don't anymore because you don't have time to think about them. Because your mind is thinking about a lot of other things, God thoughts, not about somebody saying something to you that might have offended you or hurt your feelings. Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen in life. But is it going to change you as a person? Is it going to detract from where you want to go? Is it going to throw you off the rails in your service to God? I hope not. We have problems that come along our way. There's no doubt about that. And sometimes they seem to be so big that they are insurmountable, but they're not. Be like a Caleb. Challenge yourself with this weekly commitment to start thinking more about God, God thoughts. Spend more time thinking about God and less time thinking about your problems, and see if your world doesn't change for the better. So we've picked a song that we're going to sing. What's the next? Have Thine Own Way. That's hard. You know, these songs, generally I'm selecting them because I try and be somewhat thematic. For a worship service, I like to have songs that kind of tie in with the message. Have Thine Own Way, Lord. Can you seriously stand up and sing this song and say those words? Have Thine Own Way. You can if your mind is centered on God. And you're here this morning, and I'm assuming that you want to be here. You're not coming here just to play church. You're coming here because you like meeting with your brothers and your sisters and being encouraged, and maybe hearing something from God's Word that might maybe inspire you or challenge your thinking or make you feel differently. I don't know what that experience is for each of you individually, but now to be able to stand up and sing and tell God, okay, God, have your way with my life, is an act of worship as you're singing as well. So let's stand and let's sing this song. If you have any prayer requests, you can hand them up now, and then we'll close our service with praying over those, and we'll be dismissed. Let's stand.